Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brendan Vermeyer, the founder and owner of Metabolic Solutions LLC. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I'm a functional health practitioner, mentor, and clinical advisor, on top of being a master nutrition coach and personal trainer. So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I just have a quick little video that I've been wanting to shoot for a little while, and I guess I just kind of had some time here and was feeling inspired and motivated to finish this up. So obviously, in the health and fitness space, in the health and fitness world, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to proper nutrition and what are you supposed to eat, and all of these different fad diets or kind of specialized diets. And everybody's obviously just trying to determine what's going to be best for them and most conducive for their health and fitness goals. So, sometimes I feel like I'm so far down the rabbit hole with all the nitty gritty science and the stuff that I work with on a day-to-day basis that sometimes I kind of forget what a lot of people are still confused on in regards to the basics of a healthy lifestyle and the foundation of a healthy diet and nutrition. So I wanted to really help everybody enhance the effectiveness of their nutrition while honestly kind of simplifying and wading through a lot of the confusion and hopefully giving you guys some good things to think about that will maybe make navigating your nutrition a little bit easier and a little less cumbersome. So I did make a little handy dandy guide here that I am going to be providing as a download to you guys. If you want it, you can just email me at info@metabolicsolutionsllc.com. And obviously, you can get that sent to you for free. So just a handy guide to, again, reiterate what we're about to talk about and keep it simple, concise. So before we dive in here, I want to propose sort of what is, I guess, my stance or theory in regards to human nutrition. So we kind of back up a little bit, and instead of, oh, well, gosh, am I supposed to do ketogenic or carb cycling, or, well, carbs stimulate insulin, make you fat, but then this person says carbs are your friend, and, there's just obviously, all this confusion, and then vegan versus, animal protein heavy diet. People are just really confused. So we're going to back up a little bit. So first and foremost, my stance and my theory from years and years of really overanalyzing everything related to health and fitness, I've kind of come up with this theory, which disclaimer, you might have different beliefs than me, and that's totally fine. That's cool. That's right. Just do your thing to your life. So depending on your beliefs, maybe you disagree. But the way I see it, we are a species on this planet with a lot of other species of plants and animals and bacteria and fungi and just everything in between, right? So the reality is, we're one species on a floating rock falling through space, permanently, and we have the capability of ingesting other species, and through very complicated biotransformation processes, we are able to obtain their chemical energy, right? It really is kind of that simple when you get down to the core of it. So we can eat plant species and digest and absorb their, food stuff and turn that into usable nutrients and usable chemical energy, or ATP. We can also ingest other animals, and of course, like I said, everything in between. So when we just kind of simplify and look at it that way, I personally do not believe that other species were designed for us to eat, right? I mean, nothing wants to be eaten for the most part. You can study symbiotic versus parasitic and other types of relationships in biology. That's great and all. But ultimately, for the most part, things don't want to be consumed. We want to survive. We have all these, mechanisms to drive us towards survival and fight or flight if we need to, right? So I don't think Mr. Chicken wants to be eaten and have all of his chemical energy become our chemical energy. I don't think the piece of broccoli wants to be consumed by us, right? So I guess my point being, I personally don't believe there is a perfect fuel source for the human body. There's going to be pros and cons to everything, but at the end of the day, I think it's a little bit more simple and less stressful to simply look at it and say, hey, there is no perfect fuel source. There's going to be pros and cons to each fuel source. We think, oh, well, animal protein, raises IGF too much and that promotes cancer, which is such a bold thing to think and say based off such a microscopic chemical detail. But similarly, hey, even plants have their, kind of defense mechanisms. So think about this as well. If we're hunter-gatherers and there is no perfect fuel source, there isn't anything that wants to be consumed by us. Think about this. Animals can obviously fight or flight, right? And they have that biochemical adaptation to promote that fight or flight response, right? A lion will probably eat you or fight back, or, something else might run away, like the little chicken here. But plants, on the other hand, they don't have physical defense mechanisms, but they do have chemical defense mechanisms, right? You can study that too, where there's different types of plant species that when they're being, attacked or eaten by a predator, they will release plant chemicals to tell, nearby plants to basically make the leaves taste bitter to dissuade the animal from eating it. So it's really cool, fascinating phenomena like that. And we could dive into that all day, but I think you guys get the point. So I think we need to stop thinking that there is a right or wrong or a perfect fuel source. That's a very black and white way of looking at things, and there really are no absolutes for the most part. There's absolutely no absolutes. It's all relative. It's all on a scale. And we kind of have to learn how to navigate the gray instead of thinking it's just black or white, right or wrong. So anyways, with that said, there is no perfect fuel source. So we have to basically decide what's going to be best for us, which leads me to my next point of you have to determine what are your goals. What are your beliefs? What are your goals? And what factors are going to influence what you choose to put in your mouth every day? For example, if you're vegetarian or vegan because, you're an animal lover and the idea of eating anything from an animal is just, a moral issue for you. Okay, so you decide to be vegan because more of like a animal rights belief, basically. In which case, hey, that's cool. Do your thing. It doesn't sound like that's really based on, because you think it's healthy for your body. No, that's more of kind of a spiritual, moral belief, in which case you need to realize that and accept it. Then, whether you accept it or not, your body is going to do what it's going to do based off that, right? So, my point being, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. You have to get specific. And at the same time, okay, so what are your health and fitness goals? And what are you basing progress off? How do you qualify that statement? Like, what does health mean to you? Is it, I'm eating, because obviously what I'm getting at, guys, a lot of people, I'm eating this way to lose weight, which, gosh, there's a trillion moving parts in that statement. So we really kind of need to get more specific. I mean, you could just not eat and lose weight. Obviously I say this over and over in my other videos, but losing weight and building health are not the same thing. They're just not. So are you just trying to waste away and lose weight and get really catabolic and sickly? Versus are you trying to eat a certain way to lose fat, gain muscle? Are you trying to balance blood sugar? Are you trying to balance, cortisol levels and hormonal balance? Are you trying to, avoid FODMAPs because they exacerbate your small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? So that's where we kind of need to get more specific of why are you eating the way you're eating, and obviously a lot of quote unquote nutrition people, nutrition coaches or professionals or whatever, they don't always have the education and knowledge to really go past the surface level, right? So it's a lot of just generic and maybe kind of their opinion, like, well, I read an article that said like ketosis really enhances fat burning, so you should do that. And, quite frankly, I'm making fun of my younger self because when I was 19 years old, I was a brand new professional. All the hot shots that I looked up to all really taught me that ketogenic was the best thing ever. So I practiced it. I preached it. I told all my clients to do it. And that was the only time in my life that I've ever been fatter than I wanted to be, and ultimately, hey, that wasn't the right approach for me. So it gets back to another thing I say all the time, which is There is no one size fits all. And I think we all know that, but are we practicing that knowledge? And I would say that for the most part, no, we're not really practicing that. So again, my statements there, which again, that's kind of the two biggest takeaways. There is no perfect fuel source for the human body. Otherwise, we'd probably be immortal, you know. But secondly, you know, you have to really define and qualify and get specific with why would you choose to eat the way that you're doing that? What is that based on, you know? Anyways, all right, so moving on here. So I created this guide as a way to help you navigate and simplify. You know, obviously paralysis by analysis with information overload because of the internet. So, hey, use this guide to keep it simple. Bring my mouse in here. So Nutrition 101, Step 1. It's a 3-step guide, guys. Step 1, real food from the earth, period. You know, minimal to no processing, clean. And when I say clean, what I'm really getting at is, you know, organic, non-GMO, closer to nature, as minimal pesticides, herbicides, et cetera, right? Now, yes, you can get into the conversation of like, oh, but organic's too expensive or whatever. I mean, ultimately, that's a budget issue that you need to kind of navigate your morals on and evaluate priorities, and that's a different conversation. But nonetheless, you know, our environment is more toxic than ever. Chemical manufacturing is disturbingly crazy, and that's a different conversation we're not going to get into today. But either way, just trying to get as clean as you can. But to be fair, hey, even really nasty pesticides and herbicides like glyphosate, which is the main herbicide in Roundup, which directly induces leaky gut and can cause a lot of issues, a lot of toxicity issues, and set the stage for autoimmunity. You know, glyphosate is so prevalent in our environment that you can literally measure it in rainwater. You know, and I don't want to get off onto a tangent on that, but think about it. You're buying organic food, but hey, that organic food's still outside. It's getting rained on with all the crap in the rain. So the point being, whether it's organic or not, you know, clean it. Try to get as clean as possible, as untampered with. Anyways, so step 1, real food from the earth. So obviously that processed junk in the boxes and the cans, that's not real food, period. You know, it's chemically modified food-like material. So, you know, this is stupid simple, and I don't always love talking about stupid simple things, but yeah, you know, look at the ingredients, and if it has a bunch of ingredients you can't pronounce, yada, yada, yada. But obviously, real food doesn't have ingredients. You have chicken. You have, I mean, whatever kind of meat that is. Fish. What's the ingredient? Fish. Eggs. Where are the ingredients? Eggs. You know, I think you guys get the point. Yeah, moving on. And as far as dairy, grains, we'll kind of address that more as we go. But yeah, for the most part, I do generally recommend that everybody goes kind of dairy-free, grain-free for a while. That gets a little bit more bio-individualized, but nonetheless. Step 2, proper macro balance for your metabolic type or your metabolic function, kind of a few ways you could look at that. So determine qualitative and or quantitative parameters to stay within an appropriate range for macronutrient intake, carbs, fat, and protein. So obviously, whereas micronutrients are all the little vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients that really fuel metabolic processes and enzymatic reactions, carbs, fat, and protein are what fuel the machine. You know, that is your gasoline. Now, protein's a little bit more of a building material, not as much of an energy source. But either way, you know, kind of carbs and fat are sort of your main fuel source. Everybody needs fiber. Everybody needs protein. You know, and obviously this fluctuates a little bit, and there's a lot of different theories, and that's where people get confused. But, you know, I would say the vast majority of us stick with the basics. So I do use kind of my own little methodology to help people determine sort of what macro range. Now, when we talk about macros, you know, obviously a lot of kind of meathead approaches, like, oh, well, first determine how many calories you need, and then, you know, just break that up into macro percentages or grams. And look, first off, think about it for yourself. Are you more qualitative with the way you think, or are you more quantitative? What's more helpful and mentally healthy for you to think like, hey, I should eat a palm size of, you know, protein with each meal or whatever? Or would you rather think, I want about 20 grams of protein? Like, do you like numbers, or do you like to eyeball it? it doesn't really matter. But either way, like, you're never going to be 100% accurate with however you're measuring. There's too much fluctuation, but obviously you're paying more attention. You're kind of getting it within a more consistent range. So you can't think of calories as an absolute number and you eat the same amount of calories every day, just like you don't drive the same distance in your car every day and you don't need the same amount of gas, every so often. It fluctuates. How much do you drive? How much fuel are you burning? And therefore, how often do you have to fill up? Same idea with your body. So I think it's more helpful to think about a range of caloric intake. And if you want to do RMR testing, metabolic testing, where you're measuring your resting metabolic rate, okay, great. Yeah, you can use that as kind of a number to kind of get a gauge. But hey, there will be days that you eat less than your RMR, and other days you might eat 2 to 3 times what your RMR is. But again, balance. You can't be too strictly on the numbers. Now, the second part of that equation is listening to biofeedback indicators. So these are things like your appetite, your energy, your cravings, and your mood and / motivation. So, you got to listen to your body. What is your body telling you? When you eat a certain way, do you feel full and satiated and energetic and happy and motivated with no cravings? Or are you always hungry, low energy, a bunch of cravings, and a crappy mood? You need to correlate the biofeedback. You need to correlate how you feel with the approximations you're getting with the objective numbers or serving sizes or whatever. So that's where I put people on a spectrum, right? There are going to be people that need more fat, more protein, less carbs to have proper blood sugar regulation and balance and yada, 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 which gets into a lot of how is your metabolism functioning right now, which we can investigate with step 3. But nonetheless, right here, right now, you might need more fat and protein and less carbs to be balanced and stabilize all of these biofeedback metrics. Similarly, you might have somebody else, they need more carbs and less fat, in order to, again, regulate hunger, energy, cravings, and mood. A lot of people are going to be somewhere in the middle. Most people are somewhere in the middle. I actually have a questionnaire that I use and I kind of determine. So think about it this way. If this is one extreme and this is another extreme of like, if I had a numerical scale on here of 0 to 100, and 100 is like 100% fat. And then, over here is like 100% carbs, right? It's kind of like, okay, where are you on that scale? Some people might be, negative 66%. Other people might be positive 66%. Everybody needs protein. Everybody needs fiber. Everybody needs water and nutrients and electrolytes, all that good stuff. But as far as like your 2 main fuel sources of fat and carbs, yeah, you kind of have to find that right balance. I found my balance. So using myself as an example, no matter how much I experiment or how far I drift one way or the other, anytime if I need to kind of check myself and get back to baseline, through my years of experimenting and testing, and, I've been doing this a long time and I've been paying attention for a long time, I have found that no matter where I am, I can always return to my baseline, which is I do pretty well with quite a bit of protein. I like a high protein diet. I feel better with it. I like a lot of protein. Carbs are usually on the low side, and I will give you guys kind of numbers just to put that in perspective, and then fat is liberal. I don't go out of my way to eat more fat than I feel I need, but I also don't deprive myself of it or restrict it, So if I were to give you some numbers to, again, correlate with what I feel versus just black and white numbers, I would say I eat roughly anywhere from like 2,600 calories a day to I'd probably say 3,600 calories per day. There's going to be days I eat less than that and days that I eat more than that. But I would say 95+% of the time, I fall somewhere in there, somewhere between like the 2,700 and 3,500 calorie range. And then as far as kind of macro breakdown, I probably eat roughly 300 grams protein per day, roughly, maybe, I don't know, I'd say like 150-ish grams of fat per day and probably like 200 grams of carbs or less per day. And again, those are rough approximations, but, first off, I haven't logged food in I don't know how long. It's been a while. yes, I spent a lot of time logging food and correlating with my biofeedback in order to find that range. But yeah, now, I feel pretty good. And we'll talk about that here in a second as far as an idea of how to start doing that. But nonetheless, so I do offer, this is actually kind of a standalone service that I offer is, hey, if you're just getting started, I'll give you a good food list of good food to pick from. I'll help you determine your metabolic type. And the way I kind of describe it, it's basically like, hey, if this was a scale of 0 to 100, and hey, this person, they need to be at 15%. This person needs to be at, let's say, 93%, or maybe this person's at 80% of kind of that spectrum of fat versus carbs with the protein and fiber and all of that. But it kind of gets you, by doing this questionnaire and using this methodology, it's like we immediately get you within a 33 percentile of where you should be, right? Because obviously, here's 33.3 repeating percent, here's 33.3 repeating percent, here's 33.3, that makes up basically 100 or 99.9 to the infinite decimal point. I think you guys get what I mean. But at least instead of like, well, I'm just getting started, I've no idea how much fat or protein or carbs I need, we can get you within 33% and then make small tweaks based on how you feel and how progress comes over time. So we kind of just get right to it of which bracket do you need to be into, and then we'll tweak it until we get it just right and just perfect. Because there's a lot of factors that will play into that. We don't have time to go into the sciencey details. We need to focus on the concepts, not the nitty gritty. Okay, so, if you're a more advanced nutrition, health, and fitness person, okay, quality first. I can't say that enough. That's essentially what step 1 is. I think I'll actually modify this to add that. Quality first, quantity second, and then step 3, which is the most advanced, that's where we get into tailoring to your current state of physiology, which is generally going to be lab guided, or at least it is in my private practice. I don't know what other people do. But essentially using objective data pertaining to your physiology and biochemistry to further tailor your diet based on metabolic need and function. So this can be a lot of factors. I just put a food sensitivity screenshot from one of my clients on here to serve as the easiest example. Obviously, so this client, we did the mediator release test through Oxford Biomedical, which is kind of my go-to food sensitivity test. It's probably the most functional. But either way, okay, obviously, you can barely read on there. I apologize, it's a little bit blurry, but cow's milk, she was very reactive to. Cane sugar, very reactive to. Scallops, very reactive to. Yellow, green, it quantifies it. So obviously, this red colored dye in the chemical section, let's use the pear actually instead, a food example. So very minimally reactive to pears. Whereas like something like cherries, okay, well, it's still in the green, so that's a green light, but it is on the higher end, kind of borderline yellow, versus bananas and apples. Okay, we'll stay away from those. Now, this can fluctuate over time. That's only one example. Food sensitivity, that's the easiest example, but also other considerations, such as if I have a client with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, which is a very common metabolic dysfunction, especially if you have IBS, you should probably talk to me about, do you have SIBO, and we can investigate that. But either way, if you have SIBO, which is basically dysbiotic bacterial imbalance in your intestines, we might need to take a more specific approach to your nutrition short term until we resolve that dysfunction. So that's where we would use a specialized carbohydrate diet and or low FODMAP diet to not exacerbate the SIBO while we're working on eradicating that and getting that under control. But there's a lot of other examples. I mean, if you're insulin resistant, hey, it doesn't mean you should avoid carbs forever, but hey, we definitely need to take some special considerations to monitor and regulate your blood sugar and take some pressure off your insulin and cortisol and kind of hormonal blood sugar regulation. So anyways, the point being, we get much more in depth and really tailor your diet to your current state of physiology. So it's not like you're going to eat the same way all the time for your whole life and you're always going to get the same results. It's a constantly moving target. So that's where, again, we can get as in depth with this as we want. Or nutrigenomics. I am a nutrigenomics practitioner, as in, I at times will do genetic testing on clients and actually further tailor their diet based on genetic polymorphisms. So if you visit my website, my favorite article that I've written thus far talks a lot about the genetic single nucleotide polymorphism, MTHFR, which is a very big and clinically relevant genetic mutation, so to speak. And I wrote a very thorough article covering all about that. But that's one example of nutrigenomics, where we're looking at genetic markers and mutations and how do we need to further tailor your diet to basically, bypass that genetic sort of deficiency, if you will. So anyways, we could talk about that for hours. I just wanted to give you, again, the concept, the overview. So to recap, there is no perfect fuel source, and you need to get more specific with why are you doing what you're doing? What's the outcome you're looking for? But then step one, real food from the earth, quality first. If it fits your macros person, we just probably won't get along. Step two, proper macro balance for your metabolic type and your current state of metabolic function. This is where it gets a little bit more in depth. We start getting into kind of macro breakdowns, which again, qualitative versus quantitative, correlating with biofeedback. Then step three, where we can get as customized and detailed as we want. There's no limit to how in depth. Everything from food sensitivities, regulating hormones based on what your hormones are doing right here, right now, or gut dysfunction, nutrigenomics, the list goes on and on. Very simple example here. So, then the question, but Brendan, what about food logging, right? So here's the thing, guys. I think this will be a really helpful analogy just to, again, simplify. But what about food logging? So food logging can obviously be a useful tool when you're first getting started on your health journey, right? So the analogy I like to use is it's kind of like riding a bicycle, or when you're learning how to ride a bicycle as a kid or an adult. Hey, no worries. But either way, when you're first learning, you're going to put training wheels on. Now those training wheels, they sit like an inch higher than obviously your main bike tire, right? Because then the idea is if you lean too far to the left, that left wheel catches you and prevents you from falling over and, getting yourself all beat up. Obviously, then, you lean a little bit too far to the right, and that right wheel will catch you from falling. And the idea is that you're using that to kind of save you and to guide you. So then you're feeling the balance of the bike, and you learn how to feel like, oops, that's a little bit too far, and that right wheel catches you, or, you're leaning and you're kind of feeling the balance, but then, oops, too far to the left, and, then boom, that left wheel catches you. But the point being, you have to learn how to use that objective feedback with that wheel catching you, and you have to correlate it with what you feel, that sensation of balance, right? So it's the same thing with your body. So the point being, if you always have to log food in order to maintain like a healthy weight, or, maintain your health, or however you want to look at it, you haven't learned how to ride the bike without training wheels. You're not listening to your body. You're not learning how to correlate, the external feedback with that internal sense of balance. Or if we're talking about food, you haven't learned how to correlate the data with your food log and your macros and in calories and whatever it is that you're paying attention to, your portion sizes. You haven't learned how to correlate that in your food choices with how that makes you feel with hunger, energy, cravings, mood, and motivation. So you really have to, that's kind of the big secret. Nobody talks about that. Metabolic science and working towards your health and fitness goals, it's not a math problem. It's not, X plus Y equals 10 and, whatever. It's a constantly moving target. You have to learn how to listen to your body and how to make small adjustments, and that goes with eating frequency as well. Some people do need to eat like 4 or 5 times a day to regulate blood sugar and regulate these biofeedback mechanisms. Other people, not as much. So that's where we're overcomplicating it. Like, well, you should fast, intermittent fasting, but then, well, it's an 8-hour window. It's a 2-hour eating window. You fast for 24 hours once a week. And all this stuff, or, oh, but I heard eating 6 times a day revs up your metabolism. It's like, what does any of that even mean? You're not even getting specific enough to define what that even means. It's just further confusing people. Keep it simple, listen to your body, make adjustments. So anyways, I wanted to create this guide as a way to help you kind of cut through a lot of the confusing fluff out there and just kind of get to the grounded truth and have some concrete steps to take. So again, I could talk a lot about that. Obviously, dive into other subjects in different videos, but there you have it, my Nutrition 101 guide. Keep it simple, keep it effective, take it one step at a time, and keep going. So again, Brendan Vermeyer, functional health practitioner, mentor, clinical advisor, yada, yada, yada. If you want a copy of this guide, please email me at info@metabolicsolutionsllc.com, and I will send that over, for free. And then also, if you made it to the end of this video, which, I am notorious for being a little bit long-winded, but hey, with the nature of my work, I have to be very thorough. And obviously people are already very confused, so kind of have to be a little bit long-winded to explain everything and educate the masses. But if you made it to the end of this video, good job, congrats. I am offering a little bit of a promo here. So if you're kind of ready to take your nutrition to the next level, your health to the next level, your fitness to the next level, use the coupon code Nutrition 101 20, then you'll get 20% off your initial starting functional healing program cost. So again, that's Nutrition 101 20. I know, a few numbers there, but write that down. If you include it in the email that you send me when you get your free guide, I will give you 20% off of your initial fees for any of my functional healing services. So email me, we can get that set up. I do offer complimentary 20-minute phone consults. You can use my scheduling link to schedule that. And then of course I do $50 full hour consultations. And if you end up working with me one-on-one, I apply that $50 to your initial lab test interpretation session. But either way, first things first, shoot me the email. We'll get chatting. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Much love.